I'm very, very happy to be here on Ambedkar Jayanti. The Constitution and Dr. Ambedkar have been mainstays of all people in struggle for many, many years. And I owe him a collective and a personal debt for the work he did, for what he wrote, his extraordinary mind, his intellect, and what he has left behind, and unfortunately has been claimed by only a segment of India. And we think of him as a Dalit intellectual. He is India's great intellectual. And today I want to say that I have learned so much from his writings, and his rigor and his absolute candor with which he writes, and his excellent English. I'll begin by quoting Ambedkar on Swaraj. He says, the Swaraj wherein there was no fundamental rights guaranteed for the depressed classes would not be a Swaraj to them. It would be a new slavery for them. And if you look at where we are progressing today, these words ring a very strong bell in my mind. And I feel that if we do not look at the economic slavery that's coming to us slowly and gradually, we will be worse off than we began. Now, unbridled capitalism, a threat to constitutional democracy in India. I thought about it a lot, and I thought, what should I say that brings my deepest thoughts to be shared with all of you, and yet is contained within a paradigm where I leave something open-ended, because I don't want to claim that it is. So the question is, just because in case some of you disagree, you have the right to disagree. But I, of course, am totally convinced that it is. But in public debate and public discussion, we have become so bigoted and we have become so narrow that we don't allow space for disagreement. So I thought I cannot speak for dissent and begin with a complete circle into which no one can really even enter. This title may sound provocative to some, but it reflects really a live predicament today. I don't think this question would have been framed 2 decades ago in India. I don't think we would have even thought of it. We would have been uncomfortable, but we wouldn't have called capitalism unbridled capitalism the way we do and the way we understand it today. There's a growing concern about the manipulation of democratic institutions and of instruments for perpetuating inequality today. And it justifies the autocratic state. And it's doing so in many ways. The architecture of the Indian Constitution was to ensure that growth was even and with justice. And knowing India well, the chairperson of the Constitutional Constituent Assembly and the members made quite sure that issues of equity and equality and justice would not be overrun by progress. Today, there is a lot of discussion about development and progress, but I still fail to understand what they really want, unless I read between the lines. And there is no frank statement. I have read a white paper, as Romilaji very clearly speaks of and is often stated, that there is no white paper which tells us what exactly this government intends to do. And every day there is a new assault and a new idea which takes us unawares. As we witness in India, capitalism tries to project its symbiotic relationship with democracy, and it has done so all over the world. If there is capitalism, it's assumed that there is democracy, which assumes many more things. But if you look at the way India is proceeding today, it can't brook any opposition, and therefore democracy itself is now converted into a marketplace. So you really have market, business, money, and there is no rights, there are no equality, there's no justice, there's no question of any of these things. The whole concept of national liberation has been hollowed out, and the concept of independence has been limited to a flag, a national anthem, and unfortunately religious symbols as well. The Constitution and those who invoke its principles are now inconvenient to the establishment, because we remind them consistently that independence promised us much more, that we are not satisfied with what we are getting, and that it lays the grounds really for the Constitution and the independent movement which gave us the real idea of India. It's become very popular to talk about the idea of India, and I think we don't need to go too far to know what the concept was of the idea of India. And just reading the Constitution, the preamble, and the chapter on fundamental rights is ample for us to understand what, in this very difficult land where we are divided, crisscrossed by all kinds of differences and discrimination, what really the idea of India could be. We are all argumentative Indians. Arguments were part of learning, part of discussion. Today, we look at some of the realities. Dr. Ambedkar anticipated these assaults, and that's why I think he framed the Constitution in a manner in which people like us, who come much after him, could use the Constitution to fight. And therefore, today, it's for me the most sacred document we have, to fight, to guarantee that all our brethren live with some dignity and some equality. And in the era of neoliberal globalization and the kind of controls that we see today, I'm reminded of the emergency. My young students here were probably not born in 1975, but many of us have lived through 1975. And there's no secret that we lost all our fundamental rights and we all lived in fear. No one talked to anybody else, and the trains were silent, tea shops were silent, and we just were totally worried about who would report on whom and say what. But today is not that much different. We are scared today to talk about things, because if we talk about things, there will be repression and reaction. Somebody may be shot dead, somebody may be attacked. The basic rights, such as equality, liberty, fraternity, are for everyone. They're not for a single class of people. And in the neoliberal land that we live in today, the indicator of performance and success is against equity and equality. In every way, which way, if you look at it. It's against equality and equity for people at the bottom of the rung, but also for people who are just climbing out of poverty, people who have just begun to be first generation literate. There is no future. And the future is bleak. But we would have it believe that India is really on the ball, that things are happening. But I don't know how much of it is really going to happen. There's so much outrage when subsidies are cut, subsidies are allocated for the poor, when NREGA is on everybody's breath. Everybody, I don't know, half this room would think it's a waste of time and money because you live in Delhi. We don't go to the village, rural India, and find out actually if it benefits them. Do they want it or not want it? They have an equal choice in saying whether they want it or don't want it. They have a right as a citizen of this country. Things may be wrong. There's so many things that are not doing well in Delhi. Do we get rid of them? Or we try and change the system so that it delivers better? Why, when it comes to poor people and people on the fringes or fringes of our vision, not really on the fringes of society, do we always think that it's a waste? But when there are subsidies given to the rich, it passes by without a murmur. You have so many things, that we just overlook. And I believe that out of this, I don't know how to even, 17,77,477 crores, that was this year's budget. Somebody who was an economist and a friend, who said in a public place in Ahmedabad that the social sector got less than 1% of it. And we are so agitated, and we also get so upset about what the social sector gets. And we call it inclusive budgets. Is it inclusive? It's a big question mark. But those of us who understand economics, who understand mathematics, understand common sense, do not question. So in this country, which is fractured by all kinds of things, caste, religion, and so on, and by all the various economic class issues, we don't question when Adani gets a 1 billion crore loan from 1 billion loan from rupees loan from the State Bank of India. And I haven't heard anyone say it's crony capitalism. Of course, Adani should not be subsidized by the State Bank of India. The State Bank of India should subsidize us. Us meaning not me even, but poor people. For them, the subsidy should go for whatever they want: health, food, work, schools, hospitals. Certainly not for somebody who's rich, but I haven't heard much discussed about this. Of course, you read about it in the internet papers, but it hasn't really been a big issue which has raised a stink. So the constitution, which was shaped by people who experienced caste oppression and poverty, including Dr. Ambedkar, knowing how unique this condition was to Indian society, gave us a legal framework which would help emancipate the most oppressed of us. A poor woman said in a Bharatiyar poem, and what this woman says, she says that I have no gruel, but I need to have the right to express that I have no gruel. I'm dying, and I'm short of breath. My breath comes in small gasps. But even as I die, I should have the right to say that I have nothing with me. Now this right is being taken away from poor people. Every time they go and protest against anything that they don't think is right, they are beaten, they are in jails, they are anti-national, they are put behind bars, they are told that they won't get it, and they have really no right to talk. Free speech, which is so precious to all of us in this room. We fight for anything to say, right to say what we want. That is, if we have the courage to say it. Many of us feel we shouldn't say it. Then there is no quarrel. But when a community of people speaking for something which we don't like express their views, we simply don't like it. And so the state taking an extraordinary position, the collateral is the constitution, because what we are ultimately doing is denying constitutional rights. So what we're doing is, we are saying profit versus justice. And profit versus justice can't sell. And we are all being seduced by this wonderful media which tells us everything is wonderful, where you really have the whole world looking at consumerism, and it's in every aspect. And sometimes when I come to Delhi, I feel sick, because wherever you look, there's so much money being spent, which in my days, even if you were rich, you used to think 10 times about spending. And what happens to a country where the divides are getting larger? And recently, the Prime Minister went to the Supreme Court and called us 5-star activists. And I thought, wow, that's a good thing, because I live in a mud hut now. If I become a 5-star activist, then many people can become 5-star with me. But what does it mean to be 5-star? 5-star means you speak English. 5-star means you're a liberal person. 5-star means you think for yourself. 5-star means you speak for unpopular issues. 5-star means you're secular. 5-star means maybe that you think of principles which are not within the paradigm of most political parties. But this is no way to describe us, and I would really say that if you really want to know what we do, we really basically provide spaces for others to speak, or speak in Delhi on behalf of people, because many people don't come to Delhi. But I invite you to where I work, and I'll introduce you to the real 5-star people. And one of them in my life has been Norti Bai. Norti is a Dalit, she's an activist. She was till a little while ago Sarpanch of Harmara. She's a great woman. She is my guru in many ways. She taught me my working class politics. She taught me my feminism, actually, what it really means to be a feminist in a rural area, what it means to face the Sarpanch who was an alcoholic and used to threaten her every day, how to go and fight against Roop Kanwar's. I know, young people, do you know that a woman called Roop Kanwar was forced to commit sati in Rajasthan? So when Norti went and spoke against sati in Jaipur, she was filmed one of the television companies, and that film was shown in her village, and the Thakur of that village said to her, I'll burn you alive. How dare you, a Dalit woman, go and speak against my community? So that Norti, if you ask her today, what will she say? I remember when we used to say, and sometimes we get carried away, 50 साल में इस देश में कुछ नहीं हुआ है. And she tugged at my palla and said, अपने लिए बोल, मेरे लिए मत बोलना. She said, मेरे लिए बहुत हुआ है. And what has she got? Because of the constitution. She's got all kinds of equality that has been forced down caste-ridden Harmara village because she has the law on her side. She also is responsible, one of those responsible for an extraordinary judgment on minimum wages, which was given by Justice Bhagwati and Justice Pathak. She organized the workers but refused to have her name, and eventually it was Sanjeet Roy versus the government of Rajasthan, but it was Norti's work. So she says, वो बड़े कचेरी में जाके मैं जीती हूँ. She won't say Supreme Court. बड़े कचेरी में जाके जीती हूँ. She now knows the computer. She can work the computer. She's a Narega worker. She's traveled abroad. She speaks, and she speaks fearlessly, and she still lives exactly as she always did in a semi-mud hut. And she has that awful sarpanch next to her who's still threatening her. But nevertheless, as sarpanch, she managed to do many things because she's understood the law and she's understood constitutional rights. She has given Muslims in her village the Qabristan, which they didn't get for 40 years, occupied by a very powerful Jat group in the village. She managed to remove their encroachment and gave the Qabristan to that community. So Northi for me is one person who represents India, of an India of which I'm very proud, an India which has claimed the constitution, claimed Dr. Ambedkar in a true sense, not as a statue, not to garland, not to celebrate, but to imbibe in them as the way to equality and justice is through demanding and fighting for the dignity of the person. So for me, I feel really for me, the constitution is being kept alive in many cases by the struggles in India, because we have always had to draw on constitutional rights, constitutional backing to succeed. In India today, there's another very fearful thing, and that is that we are now getting messages which are like advertisements. I don't have to tell you this, you all know it. We have brands, and I feel a little awkward, maybe it's my grey hair, that I wouldn't like to be called a brand. You know, that you're a brand. I mean, I don't think I'd like to be a brand. I mean, I'm not a matchbox or a toothpaste or a soap. I mean, I'm so much more. And how can you just call me a brand? But that's what we're doing. Brand. Everything is a brand. And in this brand and in the selling of politics as brand, we are losing something very fundamental to India, fundamental to politics, fundamental to ourselves. And I'm afraid if the CM and the PM and everybody becomes a brand, then you're disabling real discourse. You're preventing real discussion and you're preventing real debate. And we are really falling into a corporate paradigm, even in areas in which we think we are not. We are really not fighting for substantive discussion. Will we be able to protect the Constitution? Will we be able to talk about constitutional values? And at first glance, it seems an unequal battle, but it isn't. I've come here to tell you also that the people of India understand. They don't know the book so well. They can't tell you that's article so-and-so or article such and such. But they know in many ways where their real, genuine dignity and interest lies. And I think there are going to be millions of struggles in this country. And it's already beginning. I've come with one village fighting for underbridge so that its animals can go through, where 4 animals have been killed and 1 woman has died because the underbridge has not been built. There is another group of people sitting because there's an airport and they have been displaced. There's a lot of others who are fighting mining, and it's not sporadic. Every panchayat will have a group of people who are somehow or the other upset by the present development paradigm, where no rights exist, but all rights to profit and to investment exist. So I feel, just as we came in December, 20,000 of us to Delhi, I don't know how many of us was seen by television cameras. There was nothing, I think, on electronic media, but some snippets came out in all the various 160 organizations from all over this country. We co-opted the famous Nara and we said, "Ab ki baar, hamara adhikar." And people came from Bihar, from UP, they came from 19 or 20 states and traveled at their own expense, and they've gone back and they know that "Ab ki baar, hamara adhikar" in Delhi maybe once in 6 months, but in my village it's every day. And I have to fight for it. So we are the protectors of the Constitution, but we have trouble. When we come and we talk to urban groups, when we talk to various others, we need to take this much further, and I think every one of you, if you agree with me. But what has happened today, and why am I so worried, is because we had a fig leaf. One friend of mine asked me, young friend, literate friend, asked me today, what is a fig leaf? In my time, a fig leaf, everybody understood. But now I have to explain what the fig leaf is. Lip service, the fig leaf, if you go back to the Bible, what covered the nudity of Adam and Eve. So when you remove the fig leaf, they were without any cover. So it's a kind of, not really clothes, but something that covers your embarrassment and your shame. But now even the fig leaf has gone, the lip service has gone to many of the things we held dear. And the prominent advertisement before Republic Day made no bones about saying that socialist and secular were amendments to the Constitution, and there was no reason why it shouldn't have been removed from a government advertisement. And they justified it. It was not an embarrassment to say, oh, it was a mistake, we did. They said, oh, there were additions. We went back to the original. So no longer are they fringe elements. Before this, we used to think they were fringe elements. The mainstream is not like that, but they are no longer fringe elements. And since I'm a student of literature, I will misquote Hamlet or quote Hamlet and say, if this is madness, there's method in it. And we have to understand that there is a method. And unless we understand that there is a method in it, we will dismiss these fringe issues as fringe issues, and it's going to build up to something horrific. Suppression of difference of opinion and dissent and straightforward attacks on human beings. We are pulping books, and we are worried that if we give any space to this kind of discourse, others may join it. So all kinds of attempts are made to limit you. If you write something on the internet, within the next 5 minutes you get people spitting at you, people saying the most horrible things about you. And we know that when you write something which is, and of course you can buy yeses, consents, you can buy no's. So that's also a commercial bribery system that's going on. So you can get 1,000 yeses and 500,000 no's or whatever if you pay money. But the net result is that social media, which was once considered a free space where we could interact with the internet, is now again becoming a monopoly as well as a threat for people who want to say something. We hear that Google is going to is already a huge monopoly. And I went to Vienna just recently to talk in a public debate, and I heard two young men who were saying that monopolies in the internet are now going to be so huge that, and now you know what's happened with us. There's been this huge uproar amongst our young now with what we plan to enact in this country, and therefore what you get for free you'll have to pay. And whatever you write in any case on Gmail, everybody can see today. There's no privacy. So there's no privacy, there are controls, and there will be a fee, and there will be monopolies. So even areas in which we thought we had free access are being restricted. Ambedkar said, and I'll quote him, that every man who repeats the dogma of Mill that one country is not fit to rule another country must admit that one class is not fit to rule another class. These are rare quotations which I think many of you who study Ambedkar may know about it. Generally, we don't read Ambedkar, we just read the Constitution. But this double-speak that has begun in this country of believing that there is no conflict is one of the biggest mistakes we are making. Because there is conflict, there is deprivation, there is poverty, and there are so many other things that are wrong with this country. And it's a realization that there is wrong that you'll set right. Even philosophers like J. Krishnamurti have said that the first step in getting to know and being more intelligent, which is what you always talked about, was to understand that there is confusion. If you don't understand that there is confusion, how will you know how to set it aside? Because if you say you know, then you can't learn. And in a country like this, if you continue to say there's nothing wrong, then there's something wrong with people who say it. We have two things which will make us fight. If it's recognized and it's supported as it is in rural areas of India, and it's seen by the larger, more prominent part, the smaller but more prominent part of India which lives in cities, and that is that whether it is Gandhi or Ambedkar or Bhagat Singh or the communists, we have inherited a character of struggle. We know whether we fight through the legal process, whether we fight through satyagraha, or whether we fight, we are not going to be quelled. And if you go back to the emergency, the biggest disease the Indians had at that time, it was that they couldn't speak. We were so गम बढ़ गया था हमारे में कि हम कोई बोल नहीं सकते हैं. कुछ नहीं, और तो क्या था कि बोल नहीं पाता है इंडियन, तो आर्ग्यूमेंटेटिव इंडियन है, बेचारा उसको आपने कह दिया कि आप कुछ कहोगे तो पुलिस उठा के ले जाएगी, वो गम से भर गया, वो कुछ कहा नहीं. But what happened to that Indian? So today We are very closely reaching that point. So the RTI, in this entire melee of liberalization, brought in, I don't know, by coincidence or by planning or by effort, a whole lot of people who saw that governance became an issue because governance and freedom of expression became an issue because of the East, the Eastern countries in Europe getting independence. So RTI became one issue through which we could really make some inroads. But the present government, despite all its proclamation about a good, clean government, does not disclose anything. The Central Information Commissioner has not been appointed. So you can't access the Prime Minister's office, you can't get information about the Prime Minister's office. He only tweets. Now you can't have a discussion on tweets. You'll have to have a discussion रूबरू. या तो हमें मौका दे हम जाके उनके साथ बैठ के बात करें, नहीं तो कम से कम सूचना देने के लिए कोई मौका तो करना चाहिए. Why not Section 4 of the RTI? He should actually proactively put Section 4 everywhere in his various departments. So there's something wrong with power. And that's why movements should survive, movements will survive, because we will provoke the questioning of power. And that's what RTI actually is. मगर हमें जो चीज़ मिली है, which is the constitution, which is the legal structure through which we can demand accountability, demand transparency, demand rationality, and demand justice.